Miniature sets have played a pivotal role in shaping the visual language of cinema, offering filmmakers a way to bring vast worlds into the frame without constructing full-scale environments. By capturing a smaller version of a location or structure, filmmakers can suggest scale and depth while maintaining control over the lighting and movement. This is Cinema Essay, and this is why miniature sets matter. The texture of crafted materials and the precision required to build at a reduced scale can add a tactile quality that is difficult to reproduce with digital tools alone. Over time, these small-scale environments have become a bridge between imagination and reality, allowing filmmakers to experiment with perspective and storytelling. Willis O'Brien's work, particularly on the 1933 production of King Kong, showcased how miniatures could anchor a creature in a tangible setting. This approach combined skyline models with stop-motion animation, giving actors a clear point of reference when interacting with the animated figure. O'Brien's techniques informed generations of model makers who learned how to sculpt details into plaster and foam to create convincing backdrops. This set a standard of how filmmakers could mix live-action sets with small-scale scenery. Decades later, Harryhausen expanded on O'Brien's principles by integrating more complex mechanical rigs into his models. He often built individual creature parts separately, allowing for greater articulation during stop-motion sequences. This method not only increased the range of motion but also provided greater depth in the visuals, allowing miniature landscapes and creatures to occupy the same frame with believable weight. By referencing the set's miniature lighting while animating, Harryhausen ensured that shadows and highlights would match corresponding live-action elements, creating a cohesive final image. The tactile nature of miniatures matter because it anchors the imagination in a tangible reality. When a director wants to suggest massive scale, a city under siege, a distant mountain range, or a futuristic metropolis, a miniature can lend a sense of physical presence that purely digital environments lack. Crafting small bricks for a ruined cathedral or painting rust on metal can create a richness in texture. These details interact with light differently than fully digital models, offering an unpredictable but organic character in each shot. The city of New York used in the original King Kong was made by building sections of tall buildings at a smaller scale and integrating them with forced perspective. The filmmakers gave the illusion of a creature towering over New York City. In the 1970s, Grant McCune's work at Industrial Light and Magic helped define a period when miniature sets shaped the look of space operas like Star Wars and Blade Runner. He had his team build a rotating model of a warship deck, complete with tiny platforms and gun turrets. Cinematographer Douglas Trumbull would then light the model to mimic sun-like streaming, often using a hazer to catch the beam and suggest atmosphere. By placing high-intensity lamps and precise angles, they could replicate start fields and distant planetary backdrops. These miniature ship interiors and exteriors provided a sense of realism that grounded the story in a palpable universe. More recent productions used large-scale miniatures, sometimes called Bigatures, to craft sprawling fantasy landscapes. For the Lord of the Rings trilogy, a team in New Zealand constructed a mountainous fortress and an entire village at a partial scale. By incorporating architectural details, carving foam and plaster, and painting weathering onto each surface that would read well through the camera lenses, cinematographers paired long lenses with careful depth of field control to make the mountain appear farther away than it actually was. These Bigatures remain in view even when digital characters moved across them, blending practical and digital elements. For the movie Dune, miniature deserts and spy storage depots were built on soundstage floors. The crew used modular sections of rock and sand dunes, allowing them to rearrange terrain based on the director's shot list. By swapping out sections, the art department could maintain continuity while fitting within a restricted shooting schedule. The final film features both very small-scale versions of buildings and larger partial facades that support wide shots. These models, combined with digital matte paintings, produce a vision of a remote outpost that felt grounded in real materials. When a cinematographer approaches a miniature set, lens choice is critical. Telephoto lenses compress space, making a small structure appear much larger and further away. By selecting longer focal lengths and stopping the aperture down for increased depth of field, the cinematographer ensures that both foreground and background elements remain in focus. On the other hand, wider lenses can be used sparingly to exaggerate scale, though this requires carefully controlled perspective to avoid revealing edges of the models. The optics chosen influence how the camera perceives surface and texture, and they can shift the perceived size of the set dramatically. Camera angles and movements play an equally vital role. A dolly track positioned low and close to the miniature can suggest a hero's viewpoint. Slow pans and tilts, often executed with motion control rigs, maintain smoothness that mimics a full-scale environment. Some crews mount the camera on custom brackets to allow rotation around the miniature axis, creating the illusion of a flying vehicle circling a city. By varying the speed and direction of the camera motion, the depth of the miniature comes to life, giving audiences the impression that they are traveling a vast space rather than observing a small diorama. Lighting on miniature sets must be calibrated to match real-world conditions. LEDs and small tungsten fixtures are often used to replicate sunlight. These lights are positioned to cast realistic shadows that correspond to the time of the day suggested in the story. Additionally, diffusion panels can be used to soften the light, reducing the harshness that might reveal the miniature scale. As the camera moves, the lighting setup sometimes needs to be adjusted. When the cinematographer and electrician collaborate closely, they can achieve light, fall-off and contrast levels that make the miniature appear convincingly life-sized. Once footage of a miniature set is captured, the visual effects team often works to integrate it with live-action elements. In many cases, actors are filmed separately on the green screen stages. The team matches the perspective and lighting in post-production, layering digital actors or creatures into the miniature environment. Color grading helps blend the hues of the miniature's materials with the live-action footage's palette. Other times, matte paintings extend the environment beyond the physical edges of the model, creating horizons or skyline elements that would have been impossible to build physically. Digital augmentation also comes into play when particles like smoke or dust are needed. Rather than trying to produce natural smoke at miniature scale, they track camera movement and add CGI smoke that follows contours of the miniature terrain. Occasionally, small fans and real smoke are introduced on set, but this must be balanced carefully to prevent the smoke from disappearing too quickly. By combining practical and digital elements, the post-production team ensures that the miniature's grit and texture remain coherent with the layers of the composition. Building miniature sets is typically the responsibility of a team of model makers within the art department. Under the direction of a production designer, they interpret concept art to craft structures at precise scales. These artists choose materials based on how they will read through the camera. The miniature supervisor coordinates with sculptors, painters and mechanical rigging specialists to fabricate each piece. The model makers construct the environment that the camera will capture. With that team, a miniature art director often oversees the aesthetic choices, ensuring that texture, color palette, and architectural styles align with the director's vision. This person works closely with a special effects art director, who advises on mechanical elements like moving bridges or opening doors. A separate miniature shop manager might organize resources and schedule building timelines. The coordinator handles logistics so that the models are ready on schedule for the cinematographer's call-on sheet. On a production day involving a miniature set, the film crew collaborates in a more compact space compared to a full-scale location shoot. Grip and electric teams rig small-scale fixtures, sometimes using custom-built stands to hold lights at the right angle. The camera team, led by the director of photography, frames shots on monitors to confirm the perspective and focus match the intended scale. The director might stand beside the camera to see how miniature elements interact with lens settings. Sound mixers typically do not record live audio on these stages since dialogue is captured later, but a Foley artist might be on standby to record footsteps or mechanical sounds in a studio. When combining live-action sets with miniatures, timing and coordination are crucial. Actors performing on a partial set pieces use tracking markers that the visual effects team will reference in post. The director of photography must note exact lens settings, aperture and filter usage for each miniature shot to replicate this in the live-action footage. This documentation helps post-production artists align layers precisely. Still photographs of the miniature from various angles can serve as a reference for digital matte paintings. All the collaboration ensures that the final composition appears seamless, with live actors inhabiting the same space as miniature architecture. Materials chosen for miniature construction affect how the cinematographer works. Foam and plaster absorb light differently than plastic or metal, so the director of photography may test different light and diffusion materials to see how shadows render. Textured surfaces require more contrast to appear realistic on camera, so scratches and leverage marks are applied to accentuate wear and usage. Because miniatures are often shot on a higher frame rates to allow for slower motion, the cinematographer must adjust lighting intensity to accommodate the faster shutter speeds. These technical considerations influence decisions about daylight balance and color temperature, ensuring that each frame looks natural when played back at standard speed. Integrating a miniature set into a broader production often involves capturing multiple plates, one of the miniature alone, one of the actors against green screen, and sometimes a clean plate without any moving elements. The director of photography plans each shot's lens, height and tilt to maintain consistent eye lines between actors and miniature elements. Motion control systems replicate precise camera movements across multiple passes, allowing the miniatures and live-action plates to be composed later without noticeable shifts. The decision to use miniatures rather than purely digital environments often comes down to factors such as time, budget, and desired visual feel. While digital models offer flexibility, crafting a practical miniature can actually save time when building digital textures. A miniature can be photographed in camera, providing a real interplay of light and shadow that only needs minor detail touch-ups. Additionally, directors sometimes prefer the unpredictable qualities of practical textures. Challenges arise when adapting miniature sets to different narrative demands. For scenes requiring deconstructions, miniature buildings must be engineered to collapse in specific ways, often using breakaway materials and rigged explosives. This requires close collaboration between special effects technicians and model makers to ensure the debris falls true to scale. The cinematographer then captures the sequence at high frame rates to slow the action, making a small-scale destruction appear heavy and deliberate. In post-production, digital dust and sparks can be added to heighten the sense of chaos without revealing the model size. Miniature sets also serve as testing ground for new techniques. In Harry Potter, fiber optic lighting was embedded within the Hogwarts castle so that the photographer could dial an individual window lights during sunset shots. This level of control allowed the cinematographer to simulate hundreds of flickering torches without needing to set up hundreds of tiny practical lights. The result was a dynamic model that could shift its appearance between each take and season. Such innovations demonstrate how miniature craftsmanship evolves alongside lighting and camera technology. Throughout the years, model makers have integrated computer-aided design to pre-visualize miniature buildings. By generating 3D files, the art department can ensure that each piece fits together before any film is cut. The filmmaker's rhythm on a miniature set often mirrors that of a small theater production. Each department, props, painting, mechanical rigging, camera, lighting, contributes to the final shot in a choreographed sequence. On shoot day, the model is placed on a raised platform, sometimes on wheels. To adjust distance, the camera operator checks for any seam lines that might intrude on the frame, making adjustments to the model or camera position as necessary. Miniature sets continue to matter in a film landscape dominated by digital visual effects. Directors and cinematographers carry forward the understanding that a small-scale model can capture nuances of light and texture that digital renders might approximate but not replicate fully. These models also provide a tactile reference for actors and creatives, grounding high-concept narratives in something tangible. As long as filmmakers seek to balance practical artistry with emerging technologies, miniature sets will remain a valuable tool in cinematic toolbox. And this is why I think miniature sets matter. This was everything for today, and thank you so much for watching.